Hi everyone, thank you for joining us here on OpenLine tonight. My name is Chris Conti. We are continuing our conversation about suicide and teen suicide and prevention. We do want to invite people to call in and join in on the conversation. The number to call is 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-PLUS. And we also want to put this information up on the screen. It is the National Prevention Lifeline. The number there is 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Just a reminder, we are not a crisis hotline, nor are we trying to be. So if you are in real need of help, this is the number to call. But we would like to try to answer some questions that we can for folks out there. We're going to go ahead and take our first call. I believe we have Diana on line 1. Diana, can you hear me?
Yes.
And where do you live?
In Muhlenberg County, Kentucky.
Muhlenberg County. Okay. And I understand that you had someone close to you recently die by suicide?
My son killed himself on Mother's Day.
On Mother's Day. What is it that you're, I mean, how are you coping with this?
It's not easy. That's why I'm calling y'all. What would be the best way to try to cope? I have breakdowns. I don't understand it. Because he was so happy, full of life. You know, I went up on the first, we went out and eat. He was laughing, having fun, and then on Mother's Day, he didn't call me, so I know something was wrong, you know. And then the next day, they found out he had killed himself.
So that's, you know, that's something that comes up a lot. People don't see the signs, or they don't know. I mean, if someone looks happy. I mean, that's Eli, who was in our story there. His parents said he was happy a lot. He was smiling all the time, and it's hard. Right. It's really hard to catch.
Well, you know, the two major studies have been done, but I regretfully, I get too many phone calls like this at our corporate office. You know, 4 out of 5 young people who will attempt suicide will demonstrate clear warning signs. However, there are that 1 out of 5. Yeah. And whether I can say that there were warning signs present or not, I'm like, we don't get involved in trying to diagnose whether there was warning signs. But what we try to focus on is the big picture of that 4 out of 5. 80% of the time, if we know what to look for and how to appropriately respond to those, we have an opportunity to change the whether there'll be an attempt or the outcome. But that's it. As she knows, I lost my son Jason in 1997. He was 16. I would have said exactly the same thing that this lady would have said within the months of immediately losing Jason. But then by learning what we learned and by working with the professionals, you know, I can see that a lot of the instances there are those warning signs. So I think we have to go with those stats that 80% of the time we have an opportunity. But to try to figure that out, I wish I could talk to try to figure that out will drive you just out of your own mind, because you can't think as a person who takes or attempts their life is irrational at that point.
So what would your advice as a dad whose son died by suicide, what would your advice to Diana be? I mean, what I know, you know, time really is the only thing sometimes, but what, any advice?
Well,
I mean,
I don't really, you know, the time. What you wait for the time that you can, that the good memories, and try to focus on those around family. I can remember the first time that my older son and I we said, well, hey, do you remember when Jason did this? And we started laughing. I think that was the first sign that we were not forgetting Jason. I think there's sometimes people have a guilt that if I'm not just constantly mourning my son or daughter that I've lost, that's a sign that I didn't care, and that's not it. You know, first thing when I talk to a parent like this on the phone, I say, let's agree that when your son or daughter took his or her own life, they were not themselves at that point. They were mentally ill at that point. And that's something, because of our definition of mental illness, people want to reject. But if you take your life, you're not, at that point you are mentally ill. That's an irrational act. So if you can agree to that if there's a sickness at that point, then it helps you understand they didn't do that to hurt you or their friends. It was not them at that moment.
Has talking for you helped? I mean, talking about this.
The Jason Foundation is my therapy.
Yeah. I mean, being able to open up about this and being able to, you know, even say that it happened.
But I would ask her, let the people grieve differently in
Yeah.
the family. Some people, like me, I went out and started wanting to talk about it. I wanted to learn everything I could about it to help others. As I was listening to Jason and Katie, I believe was his name.
Yeah.
As I was listening today, you want to do something that's come out something positive out of such a negative situation. But yeah, for me, it's talking about it when I can hear somebody or we get a teacher. I heard one of the things they're saying that this is really impactful. This is helping them. When I hear that, that's my therapy. So it's a little selfishness on the Jason Foundation.
Dr. Fiskus, what about you? I mean, you said you would see a lot of teens maybe or parents kind of coming in with concerns or unsure of what to do. How do you handle these situations, I guess, as a doctor and a health professional?
Yeah, it's something that in some cases when we have a parent call fairly emergently that they're concerned that their child is having thoughts of suicide, we try to bring them into the office as quickly as we can, and I think most providers will try to do that. There are area resources available like mobile crisis line that we would often take advantage of in practice if we had someone that had serious concerns, and that's one way to keep that child out of an emergency room, which is also what we would like
Right.
to see happen, is to not have those children funneled to emergency rooms. I think from the caller's perspective too, I think allowing yourself to understand that you may not never understand what she may never understand what her son
Yeah.
was thinking, and I think there has to be acceptance of that
Right.
From a parent standpoint, you may not and probably won't ever really understand what happened, but whenever we can do something to try to recognize those warning signs and prevent things from heading in that direction, we need to take that opportunity.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I mean, sometimes over the last couple of years, we've lost a couple of colleagues here from suicide, and it's hard to understand. In both instances, they left children behind, and so you think to yourself, how is it so bad that they got to the point where they couldn't at least hold on for their kids? And it's just it's hard to understand, and it just doesn't. Sometimes, like you said, you just have to accept that some of it's never going to make sense.
Right.
It just isn't, because you're never going to get inside their head to that point where this happened and where they thought that this was the only option.
Right.
And that
Well,
this
if you
was
got inside their head at that point, you yourself would be at that point of
Right.
suicidal ideation.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing.
And
Yeah.
we don't. That's not a good.
So being able to watch as a friend or a parent or a colleague or a physician, to watch for people who start to withdraw or whose work performance starts to slip, or a child whose grades start to slip or becomes more withdrawn, doesn't take pleasure in the things that they used to take pleasure in. Those are all early warning signs that maybe we need to be having a conversation at least.
And I
around
remember,
that.
and Samantha said too, sometimes maybe if someone is kind of been going through a tough period and has been really down for a little bit, and then all of a sudden hits this euphoric point where they're maybe thinking about this and they kind of suddenly become happy. That's almost a warning sign, because they're thinking, well, it's going to be over soon, and for some reason it's giving them these kind of upward thoughts. So some kind of mood swing like that sometimes is a warning sign too.
Yeah, it gets you both ways. I mean, if you see them going. But the main thing is, and I think you've been stressing it through the conversation, I've seen it as a thread we're talking about, is to start that conversation, to ask sometimes the tough questions. I know it's hard to look at someone and say, are you thinking about killing yourself? Why that's really tough is that if you say yes, then what have you done?
Right.
I've got that responsibility now.
Right.
And so
let's see, we have Mary, who is on line 2. Mary, can you hear me?
Yes.
And where are you calling from?
Hermitage, Nashville,
Hermitage.
Tennessee.
Okay, and what's going on?
I'm 42 years old, and I have had a bad childhood growing up. I was pregnant at 15, and I felt very unloved and unwanted. And to this day, I still feel like, I always tell my mother I love her and everything, but I can still feel the withdrawal from me. That I believe I was the child that told on her when she ran around on my daddy, and she's always been the type of person to call me a liar about everything. And I have suicide thoughts, but I never act on it because I know I won't go to heaven.
Are you getting help? Have you talked to someone?
Yeah, I go to the mental health and they come out to my house and check on me and everything. And my mother's the type, when you went to mental health, that's an embarrassment.
Yeah.
It's not an embarrassment to me, because if the newsman had depression, he got help. So that's where I learned it's nothing to be ashamed of.
And so there's that stigma, and that comes up so often. There is this huge stigma attached to this, that makes it even harder to talk about sometimes.
It's really unfortunate that the head has been removed from the body when we talk about health, because everything physical is related to mental health as well. And so Mary raised some really good points about adverse childhood experiences, or what we call ACEs. Now there's been a lot of awareness around that. And so children who experience adverse circumstances growing up, whether that's the death of a parent, or paternal drug use, or alcoholism, or divorce, or anything that's traumatic, extreme poverty, homelessness, all of those things can contribute to mental illness down the road, but it can also have huge and lasting effects on overall health as well. And so, Mary's someone who describes having some adverse childhood experiences that probably contributed to some of the struggles that she's having now. And then that unfortunate stigma that especially I think older generations have about mental health. I hope that younger generations are kind of coming around to the idea of the importance
even just
of
hearing
that.
the word embarrassment. I mean, hearing and that's something you never want to hear with the word.
We have to tell people like Mary that we're proud of her, and she's courageous. To reach out for her, that's not a sign of weakness. And I think young people are starting to understand that maybe a little faster than us older ones. That it's not a sign of weakness. She's very courageous to say that I need help, and I'm reaching out for it, and I'm accepting it, and I'm not scared to say I need the help. So more people need to be that courageous.
We're going to continue this conversation in a moment. Again, we'd like to invite you to join in here as we continue our conversation about suicide. 615-737+, 615-737+, and we will be right back.